The sky broke into a steady weep the morning we buried Daniel Clark. Rain ticked against a field of black umbrellas at Oakwood as the casket descended, and a part of me, Miriam, his mother, seemed to go with it. My knees threatened to buckle, but Noah, my nephew, steadied me with a quiet "Aunt Miriam, breathe." A few paces away, Selene, Pierce Daniel's widow, stood statuesque, every detail immaculate, even in mourning. Beside her, the children Liam at 10 and Bella at 7 looked smaller than their clothes. Bella crushed a fistful of white lilies. Liam stared at the polished wood as if trying to will it back up. When our eyes met, he slipped close and whispered, "Mom says we might move to California. Will you come too?" Before I could answer, Celine's hand found his shoulder. "Back to your place, sweetheart. Not now." The reception followed at the house Daniel had bought 2 years earlier. Strangers spoke softly about the company he built, Clark Dynamics, and what would happen next. I heard figures, titles, succession plans, and felt none of it mattered beside the simple fear of losing my grandchildren too. A glass clinked. Mr. Adler, the family attorney, took a small makeshift podium. At Mrs. Pierce's request, we'll proceed with the reading of the will for immediate family and executives. The room thinned to a tense cluster, Selene in Daniel's armchair. Liam and Bella flanking her, Noah at my side, a few board members along the wall. Mr. Adler read the formal preamble, then the substance. To my wife, Selene Pierce, I leave my entire estate, including shares of Clark Dynamics, properties, investments, accounts, and personal effects. Custody and guardianship of our children shall rest with her with full discretion regarding their upbringing and residence. The words rolled through me like cold water. Entire, all. Full discretion. I lifted a hand the way 30 years of teaching had trained me to do. Mr. Adler, is there any provision for Daniel's mother? He checked the pages, regret softening his voice. There is not, Mrs. Clark. Selene rose, face composed, voice almost gentle. Miriam, I'm sure Daniel assumed I would see to you, but the children need stability. We'll be moving soon for a fresh start. California hung in the air like a verdict. Something in me folded, and then the lawyer cleared his throat again. There remains a sealed addendum executed 3 months after the original will. Per Daniel's instruction, it is to be read only after the primary terms. The room shifted. Selene's composure flickered. Mr. Adler turned the final page. In the event my wife attempts to separate my mother, Miriam Clark, from our children or displays contempt or cruelty toward her, this will shall be rendered null and an alternate distribution shall take effect. A breathless silence followed. Outside, thunder murmured. He continued, steady now. Under the alternate distribution, 80% of my estate shall pass to my mother, 20% shall remain with my wife. Custody of the children shall be joint between Selene Pierce and Miriam Clark. Neither may relocate the children without the other's explicit consent. Selene went pale, then flushed. That's absurd. Mr. Adler did not blink. Daniel anticipated dispute. He documented prior incidents and requested that today's proceedings be recorded. The condition has been met. Noah shifted fractionally forward, a quiet shield. Liam's hand found Bella's. The little girl looked at me with wet lashes, and for the first time since the burial, my body moved without permission. I opened my arms. Neither child crossed the room, not with all those eyes watching, but I felt the gravity reform between us, a line Daniel had refused to let anyone cut. Grief and resolve braided inside my chest. Daniel had foreseen more than I wanted to admit, the scramble for control, the risk to the children's ties, the way money could harden a heart already set on conquest. He had left guardrails where love might fail. Outside, the rain softened to a mist. Inside, the room held its breath. The terms were clear, but consequences were coming, legal, familial, corporate. I steadied myself on the arm of the chair. Whatever came next, I would not step back. The room did not erupt so much as it imploded. People found reasons to study their shoes, to refill water glasses already full, to shuffle papers that did not need shuffling. Mr. Adler closed the leather folder with a finality that felt almost ceremonial and said gently, I suggest we all take a moment. No one moved. Selene's silence lasted exactly 3 measured breaths. Then she straightened, every ribbon of composure pulled taut. This is a grotesque misreading, she announced to the air, more than to anyone in particular. Daniel would never. Mrs. Pierce, Mr. Adler said, voice steady. The instruction is unambiguous. Your counsel can review the executed addendum and the recording procedures. But the addendum governs from this moment. Liam's hand crept into Bella's, their fingers interlaced like a knot a sailor might trust in high seas. I could feel my body reassembling itself around that small gesture. Not triumph, something like gravity. Noah angled his shoulder between me and the wider room, an instinctive shield. We should go, he murmured near my ear. He was right. Raw space was the only mercy any of us could afford. I bent toward the children. Come with me for now, I said. keeping my tone ordinary as if I were proposing a detour for hot cocoa instead of a change in the architecture of our lives. Selene's eyes flicked to Mr. Adler, then to the guard near the doorway, then back to me. She had always been quick at mapping influence. For once, the quiver of calculation didn't land where she aimed it. She lifted her chin. "Take them for tonight," she said, voice cool as if she were offering a favor. "We'll discuss the logistics when our attorneys have—" She broke off, catching herself before the word one could form. "Conferred." Outside, the rain had softened a mist, haloing the lamps along the drive. Noah fetched the car while I tucked Bella's lilies onto a side table and helped Liam into his coat. When we reached the steps, Bella tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma," she whispered, "does the add in the paper mean we won't have to move?" "It means no one can move you without all of us agreeing it's right," I said. "And I don't think it is." Her shoulders unknotted by degrees. The three of us slipped into the car like refugees from a party. My apartment had been designed for one person and a great many books. By 10 o'clock, it contained 2 sleeping children, a damp peacock blue raincoat hanging over the bathroom door, and the sudden hush that follows exhaustion. Liam lay on the pull-out sofa, flat on his back, hands folded on his chest like a little old man. Bella had colonized my bed, a stuffed rabbit rescued from a box in the hall closet tucked under her chin. I did not know why I had kept the rabbit so long. Perhaps so this exact night would have something soft in it. I made tea because making tea was the shape of normal. The kettle whistled. I did not cry. Grief requires privacy and time, and both had been in short supply since the minute the phone rang, at 3 in the morning, and my life buckled at the knees. The phone lit up on the counter. A number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Clark," a woman asked when I answered. The voice was brisk, precise. "Amanda Hart with Adler and Rowe. Mr. Adler asked me to schedule you for 9:30 tomorrow. It's critical we secure signatory control and notify the company's finance office of the addendum's activation." I stared at the kettle as if it might object. "I have the children." "We've contacted Ms. Halberd," she said, as if the matter had been settled long ago. "She's the children's nanny. She can be at your apartment at 9. Has Selene?" The name tasted too familiar. "Has Mrs. Pierce agreed?" "She has been informed," Ms. Hart replied in the neutral tone of professionals trained to step over landmines without remark. "We'll see you in the morning." "Yogum." I set the phone down and watched the tea steep to the color of polished amber. The city hummed outside my window. Inside, the only sound was the faint rustle from the other room when Liam turned over and the rabbit squeaked against Bella's cheek. Children are morning people by design or necessity. At 7:30, Liam appeared in the doorway in an enormous t-shirt I had found at the back of a drawer. "Is there breakfast?" he asked, as if that were the question to pin the day to. "There is now," I said, and reached for the flour. Blueberry pancakes had been Daniel's favorite when he was 10, and going through a growth spurt that required feeding every 90 minutes. Liam watched the batter ribbon off the spoon with scientific interest. "Mom says blueberries bleed into the batter, only if you stir like a tornado." I folded gently. "We stir like the tide." That made him smile, brief and unwilling. "Do we have to go back today?" "You'll see Ms. Halberd," I said, "while I meet with the lawyers. Then we'll make a plan. The kind that uses calendars and actual conversation, not rumors and guesses." Bella shuffled in hair, a small storm cloud clutching the rabbit. "The rabbit's name is Peppermint," she announced, as if this were critical data the adults had been missing. "It's a very suitable name," I said gravely, and slid the first pancakes onto plates. At 9 on the dot, the doorbell chimed. Ms. Halberd arrived with the kind of orderly kindness that makes you want to tell strangers your secrets. She helped Bella into her shoes, listened to Liam's very detailed questions about the bus schedule, and accepted my list of emergency numbers with a nod that read as competence rather than dismissal. "Mrs. Pierce asked me to give you this," she said quietly, when the children were absorbed in an animated debate over whether Peppermint could attend school. She handed me an envelope. Inside, a single typed page, 6 lines long. "I will contact your counsel. Please refrain from contacting me directly. The children may remain with you until a temporary schedule is drafted. SP." The signature was a slash of ink like a closed door. The law firm's conference room sat in glass above the morning. Buildings made of money always try to look like they contain the weather. Mr. Adler greeted me with the formality that precedes urgency, then introduced the team a tax partner named Mr. Rhodes, a financial advisor named Leslie Beck, a corporate lawyer from their transactions group. They shook my hand as if onboarding a new colleague. "2 immediate priorities," Ms. Beck said, opening a binder the color of night. "Personal assets and corporate control. On the personal side, we'll change signatories, freeze discretionary outflows, pending audit, and move estate accounts under the alternate distributions trusteeship. On the corporate side, we need to notify Clark Dynamics of the change in voting majority, update the registrar, and address any material information that should be disclosed to the board." Mr. Adler folded his hands. "A 3rd priority has landed on our desk this morning." At 6:02, Mrs. Pierce called the company's CFO and attempted to authorize a transfer of $5 million to a private account. He declined. He had already been informed of the addendum. I did not gasp. The sound I made was more like a door latch catching a small sound of something that would now hold. Why 5? I asked, because a teacher's reflex in crisis is to return to numbers. Round numbers are for headlines, Ms. Beck said. 5 suggests she meant to move quickly, not invisibly. Daniel left me 80% of something I don't know how to run. I said plain because plainness is sometimes the only method that protects the fragile inside of truth. I won't be a figurehead. You don't have to be a technician to be a steward, Ms. Beck said. But you do need visibility. There are red flags on the company's flagship platform Sentinel that never appeared in board summaries. Cost overruns missed milestones, internal memos proposing a glide path to a release date no one believes. Who is running the place, I asked. Interim CEO is Gareth Lowell, the corporate attorney said. Daniel's COO. He's steady but weather sensitive. She chose the word carefully as if the walls might sue for libel. Your voting majority allows you to call a special meeting. If you prefer, we can build you a runway, weeks of briefings. No. I thought of Liam's question about moving Bella's rabbit heavy against her chest, the slash of Selene's signature. We hold the meeting this week. Mr. Adler allowed himself the first small smile I had seen since yesterday. Then, let's put this machine in motion. For 2 hours, I signed my name until it looked like a word I was learning in a new language. I initialed, I authorized, I consented. Behind every flourish, there would be a set of tasks I did not yet know how to perform. But I could learn. 30 years of teaching teenagers had been an advanced degree in learning under duress. When we finished, Mr. Adler handed me a sheet of paper. Bylaws Section 3.2, he said. Language authorizing a special meeting of the board by majority holder. We'll notice for Friday at 10. That gives us 3 days. A calendar sprang to life in my head, the way a map unfolds itself after years in a glove compartment. Tuesday meet, CFO and General Counsel. Wednesday brief with engineering. Thursday read everything Daniel ever sent to his leaders. Friday ask the questions they had not expected to answer. The house hunt happened almost by accident. On the way back, Noah texted a photograph of a white clapboard colonial 10 minutes from the children's school. Agent can show at 4. Good bones, he wrote. Backyard big enough for a treehouse. At 4, the agent, cheerful, competent shoe covers already in hand, walked us through rooms that smelled faintly of lemon oil and possibility. The living room had built-in shelves waiting for someone's idea of history. The kitchen window faced a slope that in winter would be a sledding hill. Upstairs, a small bedroom had a window seat that looked like it had been designed for stories. Liam ran a hand along the banister and declared, "The railing is oak." Bella tapped the window seat and announced, "This can be purple." I haven't bought anything, I told the agent, who nodded the way good agents nod when they can smell a sale but also trouble. Understood. I'll send the disclosures. And she did. Noah's phone buzzed. He glanced down and typed quickly. Heads up, he said. Selene just pulled in. I did not love the sensation of my stomach remembering what dread feels like. Let the children show her around, I said. If this is going to work, the rooms need to hear all our voices. Selene stepped through the front door, immaculate as always. Cream coat, cream scarf, even her grief tailored. Bella launched herself toward her mother, and the hug that followed had nothing curated about it. Liam hung back, then folded into the embrace, like a boy allowing 2 truths to exist at once. It's very traditional, Selene said at last, taking in the crown molding the banister. It's very you, Miriam. I let the barb pass in the interest of a future. The school bus stops at the corner, and there's a finished basement that could house every Lego your children have ever owned. Not our house, she replied. Your house. We have plenty of room. 2 homes, I said, 2 anchors. Joint really does mean joint. For a second, something like fatigue flickered across her face. You always did prefer the literal reading. I wanted to ask what reading had kept her from seeing me all those years. Instead, I said, would you like tea? We stood in a kitchen we did not yet own and practiced the habit of civility. When the children thundered upstairs again, Selene set her hands on the island the way one braces for a wave. I want a seat on the board. Of all the sentences that could have struck, I had not expected that one. Why? I was married to Daniel for a decade, she said, and the sentence had in it a plea that surprised me, a vulnerable seam at the edge of steel. I know how the investors think. I know which partners will flee if you say the wrong syllable on the wrong day. You have 80% of the votes. I have 20% of the fallout. Board seats aren't heirlooms, I said, but I didn't say no. I said, let's see Friday first. She nodded once the business nod she had given 1,000 times in rooms where I was never invited. Friday, then. As they left, Liam pressed a folded paper into my hand. A sketch of a treehouse with a pulley system and a small sign labeled "Keep Out Except Grandma." For when we move in, he said matter-of-factly, Sometimes belief is a baton children hand you, and your only job is not to drop it. On Thursday afternoon, I sat with a stack of internal reports until acronyms began to look like prayers in a language I might learn if I were patient and the gods were feeling generous. Sentinel was on paper a personalized learning engine content, adapting to a student's demonstrated cognitive patterns. The demos sparkled, the memos did not. Quiet phrases did a lot of heavy lifting, not yet reproducible unexpected behavior. Technical debt risk to timeline. Embedded in the last page of a quarterly update, a chart where the bars shifted color halfway through, as if halfway through someone had decided a problem should be renamed an opportunity. On Friday, the boardroom smelled faintly of cologne and money. Portraits of previous leaders watched from the walls with the self-assurance of men who had never had to explain the difference between stewardship and ownership to anyone. Gareth Lowell rose as I entered all-practice sympathy. "Mrs. Clark," he said, "thank you for making time. I imagine the last 48 hours have been a reminder that time is not what we think." I said, taking the chair that had been Daniel's chair and trying not to think about the afternoons he had spent here building futures I couldn't yet see. I placed my binder on the table and looked the room in the eye the way I had learned to look into a classroom and ask it to be brave. I let Mr. Adler read the notice of meeting into the record. I watched the small muscles around several mouths tense when he reached the words "majority holder." Then I asked the question that had been burning a quiet hole through my patience. Why, I said, did the last 3 board packets omit the internal assessments that placed Sentinel at high risk for failure to meet promised timelines? Someone coughed in a corner. Gareth did not blink. "Software development is an exercise in faith, Mrs. Clark. If we reported every wobble, we'd hold a funeral every Friday. That's poetry," I said, and slid the internal report across the table to him, "but this is arithmetic." To her credit, the head of R&D, Dr. Anika Chandra, a woman with thoughtful eyes and the kind of stillness that isn't fear, leaned forward. "The architecture is ambitious," she said. "We can make it work if we're honest about the slope." "Then let's be honest," I said. "To investors, to employees, to students, we say we intend to help. We reset the timeline. We stop paying bonuses tied to imaginary dates. We cut what we cannot support and fund what we must fix." Gareth's smile thinned. "Respectfully, you have been majority holder for 48 hours. And Daniel was my son for 42 years. I said, not loudly, but in a tone I had learned to use when a classroom hummed too high. "He hired you for your competence, not your comfort. We are not a weather-sensitive company." It could have devolved from there into theater. Instead, thanks perhaps to the presence at my right of Mr. Adler and at my left of Leslie Beck, it became a vote. I moved to replace Gareth as interim CEO and to separate engineering leadership from product marketing until further notice. The bylaws had a choreography. We followed it. The vote was not unanimous. It was sufficient. When the motion passed, something like wind left the room. Men and women who made their money betting on futures took a long look at the present. I asked Dr. Chandra to step in as interim CTO and form an independent technical review team. I asked the CFO to propose a compensation plan not tied to fantasy. I asked that a temporary ethics and privacy committee be impaneled before any further personalization metrics were gathered from student users. If I was going to learn to steer, I would also learn to brake. After, as the room emptied in pairs, Dr. Chandra came up beside me. "He was proud of you," she said simply. "He told me once the only person who ever made him change his mind on a sure thing was his mother." "I changed his mind about green Kool-Aid when he was 5, I said. And for the first time in days, I felt the oddest sensation humor knitting itself to grief as if they had always been meant to share a seam. My phone vibrated. A number I knew now as well as my own blood. "You staged a coup," Selene said by way of greeting. There was no preamble in her when she was angry. I held a vote. "I own 20% of that company. I want a say." "You'll have it," I said. "Come by the house tonight. We'll talk about what a say looks like. Bring your counsel if you like, or just bring your courage." She was silent for a beat. "Don't patronize me, Miriam. I'm inviting you," I said. "It's not the same thing." When I hung up, Noah was waiting in the doorway. "How'd you do?" he asked. "I didn't set anything on fire," I said. "On purpose anyway." He grinned. "That's my aunt." On the drive home, the late afternoon sun went low and wide across the highway, turning everything brass. The new house, if it became ours, would be in that light at this hour. Windows catching gold like evidence that winter had decided to forgive us for a few minutes. At home, Liam had spread his math homework across the kitchen table with the efficient sprawl of a boy who takes numbers personally. Bella was drawing purple stars on a scrap of cardboard she had found in a moving box that did not belong to us yet. Peppermint supervised from the counter with a dignity unusual in stuffed mammals. "Did you fire anyone?" Liam asked without looking up. "I made some changes," I said. "The kind grown-ups pretend are boring and aren't." "Are we moving?" Bella asked, pen held over the paper like a wand. "If the inspection goes well," I said. That means a person will come look at the house and tell us if it's pretending to be something it isn't. She nodded solemnly, as if I had given her a piece of philosophy rather than logistics. People do that too, she said. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds sometimes comes the company's entire risk register. The doorbell chimed at 6. I glanced at the clock, then at the children. Finished the page, I told Liam. And no purple on the rabbit, I told Bella. He's neutral. Selene stepped into my kitchen as if crossing a border. No coat this time, just a gray sweater and the look of someone who had been in a car rehearsing lines and had decided at the last second to try truth instead. I still want the board seat, she said without ceremony. And I still want the children to see 2 adults who can share the same sentence without setting off an alarm, I replied. You can have a seat if you agree with 2 conditions. She waited. I counted that as progress. First, we present a single front about the children. No more tight smiles after visits, no more remarks about apartments or schedules or raisin bread. I didn't know why raisin bread surfaced just then, maybe because Daniel had once called it the bread that can't decide if it's cake, and the memory had arrived to keep me from crying. And second, she asked, you don't use the board to stage a proxy war we should fight in a therapist's office. For a long moment, the only sounds in the kitchen were the scrape of pencil on paper and Bella humming to the rabbit. Then Selene let out a breath. Agreed, she said, and extended her hand across the island the way one might extend a bridge plank from one boat to another in choppy water. We shook. It did not feel like friendship. It felt like 2 smart women deciding to bleed in the same direction. Then let's work, I said. And because life isn't a story that loves neat timing, Liam chose that moment to look up from his homework. Grandma, he said, what does it mean when a curve has 2 humps? It means you're about to teach me about distributions, I said, pulling out a chair, and I'm about to pretend I remember everything. Selene watched us for a beat, something unreadable working its way across her face, as if she was measuring the distance between the life she had planned to live and the one we were constructing out of rain paper signatures and pancakes. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one. Inside, the 3 of us bent our heads over a graph, while the 4th drew purple stars and the 5th peppermint kept the peace by saying nothing. The handshake in my kitchen didn't make us friends. It made us co-owners of a future that would judge us by what we did next. After Selene left the house, exhaled into the kind of quiet that isn't peace so much as a pause between storms. Liam finished his double-humped curve, Bella drew 3 more purple stars, and peppermint remained Switzerland. In the morning, a message from Dr. Anika Chandra waited on my phone. I can brief you on Sentinel's technical review this afternoon. There's a thread you should see, late emails from Daniel the week before he died. Some attachments are missing from our servers. A hollow opened under my ribs. Missing where, missing why? I texted Selene, we need Daniel's personal machine. Will you meet me at the house? Her reply arrived in seconds. I'll be there at 2. Daniel's study looked like a photograph of Daniel's study. Selene had left it unchanged, laptop centered on the desk, pens aligned, like soldiers' notepads stacked with the precision of a man who believed chaos could be argued into order. The air held that faint, clean scent. He liked cedar and soap. This feels wrong, Selene said, arms folded across herself, a posture that read as armor rather than cold, like trespassing. It's stewardship, I said, because sometimes the only way to cross a threshold is to rename it. She sat. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she typed a password I didn't know and had never wanted to. The background bloomed a photograph of Liam and Bella at the beach, buckets raised like trophies, Daniel's shadow stretching toward them across wet sand. Selene swallowed once. He changed it 2 months before he... She didn't finish the sentence. Used to be our anniversary. New one is the kid's initials and a date. I thought it was corny. She gave a small, unkind laugh that wasn't for me. Turns out I wasn't the audience. We opened his mail first. The inbox was an archaeological dig, condolences, contracts, automated reminders still arriving like messages from a universe that hadn't heard the news. We moved to sent and searched for Chandra. There it was, 02:17 a.m., 3 days before the collapse. Subject anomalies, please review privately. I clicked. Anika attaching logs from last night's sandbox. Pattern emergence in cohort C isn't following expected architecture. We're seeing correlations between literacy tasks and reaction time micrometrics from a separate benchmark that shouldn't be co-addressable. When I isolated the pathway clusters, the activity signatures didn't match anything we designed. Either I've built a better brain than I know how to describe, or we're seeing emergent behavior I can't name. Taking the sandbox offline until we sort signal from artifact. D. The attachments were not on the machine. An error message blinked, file path not found. Selene's jaw tightened. He kept a personal mirror of the sandbox. He was always careful about that. If it isn't here, then it's somewhere else, I said. A drawer in the desk held what drawers always hold, paper clips, a mint that had outlived its promise, a key no one remembered labeling. The bottom drawer contained a slim external drive, matte black, unmarked. Daniel had once told me the best place to hide anything was where people expect to find nothing of value. We connected the drive. A directory labeled contingencies opened like a trapdoor. Inside 4 documents: symptoms, txt, consult Larson to PDF, sandbox notes, kestrel specs.pdf. Selene went still at the second title. He didn't tell me, she whispered, and there it was, the unfixable fracture. We opened symptoms.txt because denial is not a strategy. March 12th. Brief aphasia. On stage, couldn't pull reinforcement for 12 seconds. Dishta. March 28th. Jagged crescent visual artifact R. Field 7 min throbbing. R temple after. April 11th. Deja vu X3. Over 24 hours stronger than normal. Fine motor off typing. April 29th. Couldn't recall Bella's recital piece next morning. Scared. May 5th. Headaches now. 2-3x weekly. Pattern forming. Scheduling scan. June 2nd. Diagnosis confirmed aneurysm. R MCA bifurcation. Timeline uncertain. Choosing clarity. Surgical risk. Arrangements in progress. The room learned a new temperature. Selene's hand came up to her mouth and stayed there as if she were keeping something in anger, grief, regret, all the unsayables. She closed her eyes, opened them, and nodded once. Opened the consult. Consult Larson. DPDF was clinical merciless. Congenital weakness. Risk curves. Surgical options with outcomes that sounded like dice you shouldn't roll. Phrases that translated to, if we try to fix this, we might break you more. He knew, Selene said, soft and flat. He knew, and he chose not to tell me. He chose to protect us from a kind of waiting that would have broken us, I said, and hated myself for half believing it while hating him a little for deciding on our behalf. We opened sandboxed notes.md. The first lines were Daniel's voice stripped of his email polish. If Sentinel sees what I think it sees, we've been testing the wrong thing. Adaptive learning is table stakes. The real prize is early neurological signal from ordinary interaction. Later, cross-domain bleed reading tasks, plus reaction, latencies, not explainable by our design. Could be contamination. Could be emergence. Need to replicate offline with stricter controls. Another entry. If this works, we'll save people I can't save. That has to be enough. Kestrel, I asked, clicking the final file. Bird that hunts by holding still, Selene said automatically. He and Liam looked it up after a nature documentary. The name stuck. The spec wasn't long, but it was radical, a module to sit under Sentinel's educational layer and monitor microtiming's lexical slips error. Patterns, the sand-grain signals most systems toss as noise, comparing them to a baseline built from the user's earlier sessions. It wasn't medicine. It wasn't diagnosis. It was a weather vane pointed at the brain. I called Anika. You're on speaker with Selene, I said. We found Daniel's Kestrel notes. A pause and then a breath I could hear even through the line. He hinted, she said. 3rd week of that last month said there was an angle he wasn't ready to say out loud. I assumed product positioning. I didn't assume this. Is this real? Selene asked, voice steadying around the need for a footing. Or is it grief making meaning? It's plausible, Anika said, because scientists say plausible when they mean dangerous enough to treat carefully. We'll need to reconstruct the sandbox rerun with a blinded cohort and decouple everything that ever touched clinical benchmarks. If there's even a whiff of medical inference, ethics has to sit at the table from minute 1. We'll sit them at the head, I said. And we'll need counsel, Anika added. This isn't just IRB, it's regulator adjacent. Bring me a list by tomorrow noon, I said. I'll clear the runway. We ended the call. Selene looked at the screen as if it might offer absolution. It did not. What now, she asked. Now we decide if we're brave enough to do the right thing for reasons that will be misunderstood, I said. And we prepare for the fight. Which fight, she asked with half a smile that felt like the first warm thing in the room since we arrived. All of them. That night, Bella's panic arrived, like weather, no asking permission, no obeying clocks. We heard the thud of small feet before we saw her eyes wide, breaths shallow and too many. I dreamed Daddy was saying something, she gasped, hands fluttering to her throat, but I couldn't hear him, and then the room got too small and, Hey, Peppermint is very concerned, I said, keeping my voice low and ordinary as I took her hand. He asked for the square breathing. I drew a square in the air, in for 4 hold, for 4 out, for 4 hold, for 4. Selene was already kneeling, her hand warm against Bella's shoulder. Look at my eyes, she said, slow and certain. We can do it together. We're a triangle. Triangles don't fall over. On the 3rd square, Bella's breaths began to listen. On the 5th, her shoulders dropped. On the 6th, tears arrived, honest ones. Why didn't he tell us he was sick? She asked. The way only a child can make a question both knife and prayer. He told us the way he knew, I said. He built guardrails and left notes. It wasn't the answer she deserved. It was the one I had. Bella slid between us and let her weight be part of our gravity. In that small triangle, Selene and I held a truce larger than either of us could have accepted 3 days earlier. When Bella slept, Selene stayed in the doorway a long moment. If Kestrel can warn another family 6 months sooner than we got warned, she said, we do it. Even if it changes what the company is. It will, I said. It has already. At the special session the next morning, we expanded the technical review into a cross-functional task force. Annika on science, the CFO on guardrails. Legal in the room from the first slide, privacy with a veto. No one could route around. I announced an immediate separation between Sentinel's educational pipeline and any exploratory signal analysis work. 2 stacks, I said. No back doors. Gareth, newly displaced and still on the board, raised an eyebrow sharp enough to cut. You're suggesting we go to investors with the story that we're slowing our flagship and pivoting into a space that eats companies for breakfast. Regulatory liability, the ethics circus. I'm suggesting we tell the truth, I said. We can deliver learning tools on honest timelines, and we can explore something that might make the worst day of someone's life arrive later or not at all. If we can't carry both ideas at once, then we don't deserve either market. Annika tapped the table lightly with a pen. We'll start with replication. If the signal holds under stricter protocol, we'll design a prospective pilot with informed consent and oversight. If it doesn't, we'll publish a negative result and go back to making Sentinel the best teacher it can be. Name, someone asked, halfway a joke, halfway a bid to domesticate the unknown. Kestrel is an internal code name, I said, externally nothing until we know what we have. Selene cleared her throat. When we get there, she said, we choose a name that makes a promise we intend to keep. We adjourned with more work than hours, and a calendar that felt like walking on a moving train. On the way to the elevator, Annika matched my pace. One more thing, she said. If Daniel's symptoms ramped when the anomalies appeared, a neurologist should review his logs. If Kestrel was picking up latent signal from his interactions, it matters to validate that. The idea of discussing my son's brain in the present tense burned and made a kind of necessary sense. Send me 3 names, I said. We'll call all of them. Call. By late afternoon, we were on a video call with Dr. Stephen Larson, the same name I had seen in the PEEP. He had a clinician's calm and a researcher's appetite. I can't diagnose a man who isn't here, he said after we'd summarized the logs, the architecture, the hypothesis. But if you can replicate correlation between cognitive micrometrics and ground truth imaging in a living cohort, you'll have something medicine will have to take seriously. And the valley of lawyers between here and there, Selene asked. He smiled a brief, unfunny smile. It's real. So is the upside. I've watched too many families learn about an aneurysm for the first time because it decided to announce itself catastrophically. After we hung up, Selene stared at the black rectangle where his face had been. He knew exactly how to talk to us, she said. Hope, but with seatbelts. Seatbelts, I echoed. Our brand. We began to live 2 timelines at once. In the public, one Sentinel's launch schedule adjusted to dates investors could hate with dignity. In the private one, a small team in a locked lab reran Daniel's sandbox with data that was scrubbed so aggressively it squeaked. We recruited a dozen volunteers employees who read every word of consent and still signed with the ethics chair in the room and a camera no one could shut off without 3 keys. At home, the new house inspection came back clean. The tree in the backyard had a branch at exactly the height Liam's drawing required. Bella tested the window seat and declared it suitable for reading and for looking serious out of when thinking about difficult problems. On a Tuesday evening that tried to be spring, I stood at the kitchen island, smoothing the purchase agreement with a palm that wouldn't stop trembling. Noah, reading the contract over my shoulder, whistled softly. Welcome to owning a lawn, he said. Condolences. Liam barreled in, holding a printout. Grandma, look. It was a graph, peaks and valleys like a mountain range, 2 lines braided together. Those are micro-latencies from a pilot reader, he said, eyes bright. Dr. Chandra said I could see one. The top line is the baseline. The other one is last week. She says the difference is signal and not noise. Did you understand all of that? I asked, checking for the glint of rote. He grinned. No, but I understood the part where a line tells you something before a person can. I kissed the top of his head. That's half of science right there. The doorbell chimed. Selene stepped in without ceremony, a printed deck in her hand and wind in her hair. Briefing for tomorrow's investor call, she said, handing me the packet. Narrative, first numbers, second promises only where we can cash them. Page 8 is the line you say if someone tries to box you into a date. What's the line? We're choosing honest timelines over heroic fantasies, she said, then stopped talking. I laughed, a startled sound that felt like a window opening. You should coach politicians. I do, she said deadpan, and for half a second we were 2 women in a kitchen at the end of a long day, amused at a private joke no one had to approve. Bella wandered in peppermint under one arm. "Are you staying for dinner?" she asked, as if that were the only question worth anyone's time. "Only if there is pepper on the chicken," Selene said. Bella considered this. There can be. We ate at the table that would soon move to the new dining room, a map of our strange alliance set with cutlery. Later, with the children upstairs turning the window seat into a stage for a rabbit Selene, and I cleared plates in a rhythm that didn't demand choreography. I talked to PR about what to call the exploratory work. "If anyone sniffs it out," she said, rinsing. "They like Signal Health for now, neutral humble, not a promise. We'll need a final name someday," I said, towel in hand. "Future in mind. Something that tells people where to look." "Beacon," she said at the sink, "not a performance, not a brand test, just a word that arrived and felt like light." I set the plate down very carefully. "Then we'd better build something worthy of it." Near midnight, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Annika, a text, replication holds in 912. 2 false positives, 1 artifact. It's not nothing, Miriam. It's not everything either. We keep going." I lay there listening to the quiet of a house that was still mine and about to be ours. Children asleep down the hall, a widow 2 streets away practicing the courage of her better self, a company learning to tell the truth out loud. Grief curled up beside resolve, both of them stubborn, both of them mine. In the morning, we would stand in front of investors and say we were slowing one future to chase another that might save lives. After that, we would call the ethics chair again. After that, we would drive across town and sign a deed that would anchor 2 small people in a neighborhood where the school bus stopped at the corner and the tree in the backyard had exactly the right branch. And after that, after all of that, we would learn whether we were the kind of family, the kind of company that could carry a beacon without mistaking it for a crown. Spring learned our names by the time we were ready to speak in public. The replication held well enough to justify a small consented clinical pilot run in partnership with 2 hospitals. The privacy committee kept its chair's veto close and visible. We wrote consent like a love letter to Clarity opt-in, only plain language seatbelts on every sentence. Sentinel's education track marched on with honest dates and fewer miracles. In the lab across the hall, the module once called Kestrel learned to listen without eavesdropping. A year to the week after the rain-dark funeral, Clark Dynamics filled the auditorium. Employees in their best jackets, partners with careful eyes, physicians who make their livings telling hard truths. On stage, a banner read, "Daniel's Beacon." Selene had argued for it, and the board had voted unanimously. "A name isn't ownership," she said. "It's a promise to aim light where it will do the most good." Selene opened the event with the version of herself I had come to respect, most composed, exact, unsentimental, and then when the line required it, human. "This began as a learning tool," she said, "and became a listening tool. Not a doctor, not a diagnosis, but a way to notice the little mess before it becomes the unfixable mess." A murmur moved through the room. People recognized the shape of their own losses. I spoke after the clinical team. Standing at the podium, I could see Liam and Bella in the front row, black shoes polished back straight, peppermint discreetly poking from Bella's bag as if the rabbit had a badge. "My son taught me to love books," I said, "and then he taught me to love systems that read us back." We are making Daniel's Beacon available first, where watchfulness matters most, clinics and community centers that serve people who rarely get seen early. Sentinel will go to schools with opt-in, and any signal that looks like a medical whisper will not be collected there. We will not trade convenience for consent. The words steadied me as they left my mouth, a covenant said out loud, so we couldn't forget it later. When the applause settled, Dr. Chandra presented the early pilot data with the reverence and caution such numbers deserve. Trend lines error bars a sober slide titled, "What This Is Not." I watched faces open by degrees, hope not hunger, interest not conquest. When the neurologist from the hospital, the same Dr. Larson, whose name had once lived in a PDF on Daniel's hard drive, took the mic, he said a single sentence that made my knees warm. "If this holds, some families will get 6 months back." Afterward, in the milling of hands and names and ceremonial photographs, Liam tugged my sleeve. "Was Dad a good public speaker?" "He was better in rooms where the whiteboard was bigger than the audience," I said. And Liam smiled the way Daniel used to when he recognized a truth he could live with. Bella was quiet until we found a corner with a lemonade. "I didn't need the square tonight," she said, surprised by her own body. Therapy and time had built her a bridge. We had only walked beside her while she learned where to put her feet. Selene came over, hair neat again, after the stage lights. She looked like someone who had sprinted a marathon and then remembered to breathe. "You were very good," she said. "It was not charity. It was a professional assessment, and it mattered more than I wanted to admit." "Seatbelts," I said. "Always," she replied. We kept one promise immediately. As the sun slid down behind the glass, we drove together, 4 of us in one car to Oakwood. Snowdrops had replaced the snow. The granite didn't look so foreign in the clean light. "Hi, Dad," Bella said, tracing the letters. "Your beacon got a name." She set a purple star sticker at the base of the stone, then carefully peeled it up and tucked it into her pocket, as if she knew granite doesn't need our labels. Liam unfolded a paper and smoothed it against his thigh. "We rebuilt the treehouse drawing," he said softly. "I improved the pulley system. He didn't place the page anywhere. He just let his father hear about a better design. Selene laid one white lily. She still chooses lilies on the grass. We're keeping our side of this," she said. There was no tremor in her voice. I suspected she had practiced the sentence and then found she didn't need to. We drove to the diner Daniel used to choose after hospital visits with my husband. Hot chocolate in heavy mugs, whipped cream melting into decisions already made. Liam argued with me about whether a median can lie. Bella declared that peppermint preferred booths. Selene looked out the window for a long beat and then back at us, present like a choice. The next weeks were ordinary in the way that makes courage possible. We signed the deed. The inspector shook our hands as if our ownership were a community service. The treehouse rose plank by careful plank, Noah and Liam measuring twice, because Daniel had taught all of us that third cuts are expensive. Bella painted the window seat purple with tape lines so straight I thought for a second the paint had found its own discipline. Sentinel shipped a version that matched what it said on the box. The pilot expanded by inches, not miles. Dr. Chandra sent updates that began with no shortcuts. At the board, Selene took her seat, and then to my quiet astonishment used it less like a stage and more like a lever. She pressed for ethics first on every agenda. She caught a partner shading the truth and shaded it back into shape. We learned how to disagree without inviting spectators. We did not win every vote. We kept the ones that mattered. We also learned a rhythm at home that felt, if not seamless, then sewn with intention. 3 nights at my house, 3 at hers, Sundays together when schedules allowed. Tight smiles went out of style. So did remarks about apartments and schedules. When panic knocked at odd hours, one of us answered and the other made tea. When a journalist tried to make a story out of 2 women who should have stayed enemies, we gave them 5 sentences about joint custody and nothing else. The children asked fewer questions with no answers in them. On a late afternoon, heavy with gold, we stood in the backyard under the new platform. Liam tested the pulley with a dictionary. Bella declared the rope worthy. Peppermint had been promoted to foreman. Selene handed me a paper sack. "Raisin bread," she said deadpan. "For the bread that can't decide if it's cake." I laughed, and this time the sound didn't have to push through anything to be allowed. "Do you ever get used to the idea that this is how it turned out?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I get used to liking it." Dusk folded itself along the fence. Somewhere down the block, the school bus let off a child who would grow up under a sky where a machine might one day whisper, "Look sooner." In our kitchen, a light over the sink clicked on because a small hand remembered to make it so. Inside my chest, grief and gratitude made their uneasy truce again, as they will every day until they don't have to. Daniel's beacon is not a crown. We carry it. We adjust its angle. We hand it off when our arms get tired so the light doesn't wobble. It is not the life we imagined, not for him, not for us. But it is a life with seatbelts and purple stars and rope that holds. And whenever the dark thickens, we turn the lamp. And there we are, 4 figures stitched by intention, not accident, crossing the yard toward a house we chose where the porch light waits like a kept promise. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.